Under the light of the rising sun, a man kneels before a bandaged woman, gently taking her hand. He bestows upon her the name Resur, explaining that as the name suggests, he will heal her and she will be reborn. He concludes the encounter by giving her his solemn promise. Earlier that day, the apothecary reassures a young boy that his wound has been disinfected and that everything is fine. The boy excitedly observes that it no longer hurts, prompting the man to caution him to be careful not to fall again and to enjoy his play. As the apothecary prepares to depart, the children cheerfully thank him and wish him well. Walking through the village, the apothecary checks his shopping list and wonders where he should start his day. As he passes a shop, the pawn bazaar owner rushes out, exclaiming that the apothecary has arrived just in time. Recognizing the man, the apothecary asks if something is wrong or if his back pain has returned, but the owner clarifies that is not the case this time. The owner then asks the apothecary to come inside for a moment, leaving the traveler sounding confused. Leading the apothecary inside, the shop owner mentions that he thought the traveler might find something useful. He explains that an important person recently pushed a troublesome thing onto him. As they enter a back room, the apothecary stands in the doorway, coming face to face with a mysterious individual with pointed ears. In this intense sequence of close-ups, the apothecary is visibly shaken, his eye wide with shock as he stares at the figure before him. The mysterious individual is revealed to be an elf who got her ear pierced severely, her own wide, bloodshot eye staring back with an expression of deep trauma or exhaustion. Her face and neck are heavily wrapped in tattered bandages. A young elven woman sits huddled against a stone wall, her body heavily scarred and wrapped in tattered bandages. The pawn bazaar owner reveals the grim reality of her situation, identifying her as a discarded being who has been pushed to the absolute limit of her endurance. The pawn bazaar owner explains to the apothecary that it is said an elf's body can be used as an ingredient for a universal remedy. He admits, however, that he lacks the proper connections to facilitate such a transaction and asks the apothecary for his opinion. In response, the apothecary approaches the wounded woman and asks to take a look at her. He then tries to gently check her condition using his magic. During his examination, the apothecary observes a horrifying series of injuries on the elf. Her eyes show no response, her left eye is physically missing, and all of her teeth except the back molars have been removed. He notes that her nails were ripped off, her body is covered in whip scars, and the soft, mushy texture of her fingers suggests advanced gangrene. Horrified by such cruelty, he concludes that with these wounds, a small movement confirms she can still hear him when he tries to speak to her. Although he finds that both of her ears have been pierced with holes, her internal organs cannot possibly be intact. Deeply affected by her condition, the apothecary realizes that if he does not treat or protect the girl, she will not survive. He watches in shock as the elf, through her pain and exhaustion, managed to find a voice. Tears well in her eyes as she struggles to communicate her one remaining desire that she wants to go home. The apothecary is visibly overcome with rage and sorrow as he hears the girl's plea. Clenching his fist against the wall, he reflects on how many times such a simple wish must have been heartlessly trampled upon by others. Standing nearby, the shop owner remains oblivious to the apothecary's inner turmoil, pressing him once more for his decision regarding the elf. The shop owner attempts to close a deal by suggesting the apothecary purchase the girl to use her as medicinal material. He eagerly offers to sell her for less than the price of a cow or a horse, emphasizing his desperation to get rid of her. Growing impatient with the apothecary's silence, he mentions that if the apothecary refuses, he will simply find another buyer, as his primary concern is ensuring she does not die within his shop. In a final, decisive moment, the apothecary reaches his limit, telling the shop owner that he'll take her now. The elf girl looks up with wide, tear-filled eyes, her expression one of quiet shock. The shop owner reacts with disbelief to the apothecary's request, questioning if he truly intends to borrow a carrying backpack and transport the elf himself. He points out the absurdity of the plan, noting that the apothecary has traveled all the way from the other side of the mountain. The apothecary simply confirms that he is in a hurry and begins preparing the girl for travel. He gently covers her with a cloth and reassures her that he will not hurt her, explaining that he will hold her body securely to prevent her from falling. As he works, he watches her face with a heavy expression, wondering how she is perceiving the current situation. He stares down at her with a look of deep concern as he finishes tightening the knots of the fabric. The apothecary secures the girl inside his carrying backpack, wrapping her carefully for the journey. The apothecary carries the elf woman on his back as they depart from the village. He reflects on her tragic state, noting that she has become far too accustomed to being treated like an object rather than a person. The scene shifts to a wide view of their path, showing them heading away from the stone walls of the town and toward a dense, surrounding forest. He navigates the rugged forest path as he carries the elf strapped securely to his back. He reassures her to hold on just a little longer, explaining that they are taking a shortcut and warns that the journey will be a bit shaky. She remains silent, looking downward with a pained or weary expression as they continue their trek through the woods. As the sun begins to set over the distant mountains, he wipes sweat from his brow, noting that nightfall is approaching, and that if they set out again in the morning, they will arrive at their destination before noon. So he decides they should rest there for the night. As he prepares to settle in, he informs the elf that he is going to remove the cloth covering her. She remains weak, barely able to murmur a longing for home. After setting her down by a large tree, the apothecary tells the elf that he will prepare some food and asks her to wait there for a moment. As he sets down his heavy pack, he observes her quietly, thinking to himself that her expression has improved slightly since they left the city. He muses that this might be because elves have lived in deep forests since ancient times. While preparing a meal over the fire, he observes the consistency of the food, noting that if it is soft enough, the elf should be able to swallow it without any issues. As the aroma of the cooking food fills the air, he notices her sniffing the scent and concludes that she seems able to perceive smells. Approaching the elf with a warm bowl, he presents her with some food and encourages her to take her time eating. He carefully offers a spoonful to her lips, and she lets out a small sound as she begins to accept the meal. As she begins to eat, the elf lets out a pained or strained sound, causing him to react with sudden concern. He asks if she is all right and wonders aloud if the food is still too hot for her. She continues to chew slowly, her eyes welling with tears as she eats in silence. As she continues to chew and swallow the meal, the apothecary watches her with a gentle, tearful expression of his own. With a soft smile, he asks if the food tastes good to her. The elf continues to munch on the food while he continues to patiently feed her another spoonful. After the meal, he gently wipes the elf's mouth with a cloth and suggests that they should stop there for the day. She remains silent, a single tear glistening as it falls from her eye as the forest grows dark under the moonlight. In the middle of the night, the elf was gasping for air as she succumbs to a high fever as she sweats a lot. The apothecary wakes to find her in severe distress, noting that her fever has become dangerously high. As she groans in pain, he worriedly contemplates whether her condition is due to simple exhaustion or if her many wounds have caused inflammation. He further speculates that an infection may have already reached her internal organs. Determined to help, he notes that he simply has to apply symptomatic treatment. He decides to prepare a brew with antipyretic and antibacterial properties, including a decoction of elderflower and wild borage mixed with crushed magic stone. Because the taste is unbearable on its own, he adds honey and salt to make it easier to drink. While gently supporting her, he apologizes for the difficulty but asks her to please drink the medicine. As the elf drinks the medicine, he encourages her to take it slowly and tells her to calm down. He expresses his hope that the remedy will help her at least a little. After she finishes, she continues to breathe heavily in her sleep, eventually murmuring a faint, confused question about where she is. Looking at her with deep compassion, the apothecary assures her that she will surely be able to go home. He gently places a cool cloth on her forehead and tells her that, for now, she should simply rest. As he watches over her, she finally drifts back into a quiet sleep. He sits alone by the crackling campfire, watching over the sleeping elf as the night deepens. He remains steadfast in his promise that she will surely be able to return home. Sitting by the fire, he reflects on his earlier promise, worrying that his vow to return her home might have been irresponsible. Despite his doubts, he feels a strong desire to help her return. He acknowledges that his own race, the Urtanos, are responsible for her current state and thinks about how the 5 races of the continent have lived in mutual distrust since the war 80 years ago. To him, he believes race should be nothing more than physical traits and cultural differences, but many doesn't see it that way. Just like the bizarre owner who mistreated the woman without even realizing his own cruelty. He reflects on how others look down on different races and questions if they even consider them to be people at all. In the darkness, the apothecary considers how many people fail to see others as a person, including those who do not even consider other races as people. Suddenly, his eyes got widened. He was suddenly pulled into the darkness by a multitude of grasping hands. A skeletal figure looms over him and brands him a murderer. He looks at their hands in horror, seeing them covered in the metaphorical blood of their past actions. Shadowy, skeletal figures with hollow eyes and screaming mouths surround him, representing the weight of his sins. Haunting him with voices accusing him of being a murderer, echoing the internal torment they are experiencing. As he returns to reality, he observes his clean palms against the backdrop of a peaceful forest clearing. While looking down at his sleeping companion, he questions if what he experienced was merely a dream. He gazes down at the elf girl as she begins to wake, her eyes regaining a spark of life. Softening his expression, he greets her with a quiet good morning. He gently informs her that he is going to lift her up a little bit to make her more comfortable. Observing the girl, the man notes that while her fever appears to have subsided, they must remain vigilant. He looks at his hand and reflects on his resolve to fulfill her wish, which is simply to return home. But for now, what he can do to fulfill her wish is simple. His mission is to treat her so she can regain a life as close as possible to the one she had before. Although he knows it will take time and a lot of effort, and the haunting shadows of being called a murderer, he steels his resolve to see it through. Looking at her with empathy, he told her that she is deeply wounded, noting that the damage extends beyond her body to her heart as well. He then vows that he will help her. While he admits he does not know what kind of girl she used to be. Looking at the girl with determination, he gently takes her bandaged hand in his. He explains that the only thing he wants for her is just one thing, which is why he wants to give her a name filled with a wish. He bestows the name Risur upon the girl as they sit together in the forest, and promises her that the true meaning of that name is that he will heal her and that she will be reborn. Understanding what he said, her eyes glowed. He then suggests that they eat before continuing on their way. He expresses confidence that they will reach the workshop later that day. Holding a bowl and a wooden spoon, he informs her that the food is ready. He addresses her by her new name, Risur-san, while she looks on with wide, expectant eyes. The apothecary suggests that they eat together. As the sun shines over the mountains, this notes that this moment marks the beginning of Risur's battle for recovery alongside the apothecary. As the sun shines over a quiet, rural settlement, a man arrives carrying a heavily bandaged woman on his back. Standing before a modest house, he informs Risur that they have arrived and explains that this is where she will be living from now on. Upon entering the house, the apothecary gently settles the elf onto a sofa, confirming to her that this is indeed her new home. He suggests that they should begin with a bath, but as he notices the state of her worn clothing, he quickly informs her that he needs to step out for a moment and asks her to wait there for him. He went outside and knocks on his neighbor's door. The apothecary visits a neighbor's house and introduces himself at the door, stating that he has a request. A young girl named Mona excitedly greets him as the apothecary uncle and immediately asks if he has brought the sweets she requested. He apologetically explains that something urgent has come up, while a woman's voice calls out for Mona from inside. A woman who seems to be Mona's mother whose name joins them and reminds the young girl that she was told not to be selfish, explaining that the apothecary is working late. She then apologizes to him, acknowledging that he must be tired. The apothecary reassures her and mentions that he actually has a favor to ask of her if she doesn't mind. On remarks that it is unusual for him to ask her for something and leads him inside to gather some items. She hands him a bundle, explaining that although they are her old clothes, she specifically chose pieces that are easy to adjust with strings. The apothecary thanks her, noting how much the gesture helps, while she encourages him to let her know if he needs anything else. Back at the house, a hot bath is prepared in a wooden tub while steam rises into the air. He informs Risur that he will take her clothes off for a moment because he needs to wash her body. As he begins to undress her, her worn garments fall away, and she lets out a small cry of surprise. The apothecary prepares to wash the elf woman, noting with concern that she shows no reaction at all even when undressed. As she sits silently on a small stool, her back is revealed to be covered in a network of deep, intersecting scars. He gazes at the extensive damage to her skin and wonders to himself if she has truly suffered that much. And he couldn't help but cry. The deep scars across her back resurface like memories of malice. Further down, her neck bears bruises as if it had been tightly constricted with extreme force, revealing the clear and terrifying imprints of human fingers. Deeply affected by the sight of the woman's injuries, the apothecary curses under his breath while struggling to contain his rising anger. As he begins tending to her, he finds himself questioning who could have committed such atrocities against her. He eventually forces himself to stay calm, deciding that he must simply focus on what is necessary for her care at that moment. The apothecary begins by treating the elf woman's external wounds. He meticulously applies an herbal-based ointment to her scars and covers them with Carria's medicine to accelerate the healing process. Finally, he places a piece of cloth soaked in slime fluid on top, noting that the bandages will need to be changed every 3 days. After finishing the medical treatment, he tells her that they should put some clothes on her. While reaching for the bundle, he discovers a woman's comb and wonders if An included it as a thoughtful gesture. He then begins to gently brush the elf's hair. Having been carefully tended to and dressed in the borrowed clothing, the elf sits silently on a wooden chair. Her hair is neatly combed and she is now fully clothed in the lace-up bodice and long skirt provided by the neighbor, though she remains still and expressionless as she stares blankly ahead. The apothecary admitted that maybe this is just his hypocrisy as he gazes at the elf, reflecting on how remarkably different she looks now compared to when they arrived. He feels a sense of relief seeing her transformation. Exhausted from the day's events, he lets out a tired breath and asks if she would like to have a meal, noting that his relief has finally made him feel sleepy. The apothecary returns to the table with 2 steaming bowls of food, apologizing for the wait. As he sets the meal down, he notices the woman trembling and fidgeting in her seat. Panicked, he asks if she is cold or if her fever has returned. He then has a sudden realization, shouting in shock as he asks if she is simply holding it in because she needs to use the toilet. After rushing her to the bathroom and apologizing for his lack of attention, the apothecary notes with surprise that the elf expressed deep embarrassment despite her usual lack of emotion. He reflects that her sensitivity to physiological needs might still be intact. As he gently feeds her, he wonders if eating something delicious could help her open her heart, though he notices with concern that she only has her molars left and considers if a denture is the only solution. As he feeds the elf, he contemplates her long-term recovery, worrying that even if she regains the ability to chew, the internal organ damage and the progression of necrosis in her limbs remain grave concerns. He desperately wonders if amputation is truly the only option or if there is another way, eventually considering whether he should seek help from another person who is also a doctor. Finally, he tells the elf that he will carry her as he lifts her into his arms. The apothecary gently tucks the elf into bed and pulls the covers over her. Watching her finally drift into a quiet sleep, he observes with a heavy heart that she seems to have finally found some peace. As Risur sleeps, the apothecary rests by her bedside, wishing for a medicine capable of restoring her eyes and limbs. He suddenly remembers the high potion, a secret elixir that enables physical regeneration. He recalls being told that such potions truly exist, distinguishing them from the absurd rumors regarding a universal elixir made from elves. He determines that he will attempt to create the elixir himself, but he acknowledges that his current equipment and knowledge are insufficient. He remains resolute in his belief that there must be a way. Despite the potential for unnecessary risks, he feels he cannot afford to wait. The next day, the apothecary feeds a crow while telling it that he is counting on it to deliver the letter. Once the bird takes flight, he addresses Risur-san, stating that he will be working nearby and proceeds to go together with his tool. In a quiet garden outside his home, he works the soil with a pickaxe. He explains that he cannot neglect the garden unless he is away from home, especially since he is growing ingredients for medicine. Nearby, the elf watches him quietly, her face partially obscured as she observes his diligent labor. The elf watches him with tear-filled eyes. She softly murmurs to herself, noting that the smell of the forest reminds her of her house. As she begins to sob quietly, the man pauses his labor, looking down as if affected by her grief. Mona suddenly arrives, excitedly enters his house, calling him out as Oji-san. As she walks in, she is greeted by the apothecary carrying boxes, who asks if she is there to help with deliveries. Mona shyly admits that she is only there for the day, but her eyes light up with wonder as she saw someone inside the room. Mona expressed her excitement at the elf's presence, referring to her as the patient Wani-chan. The apothecary introduced the woman as Risur-san, though Mona immediately began addressing her affectionately as Risur-chan. Mona then asked her grandfather for permission to speak with the guest, to which he readily agreed, privately reflecting that interacting with someone else might provide a positive stimulus for the elf. Mona sits beside her as he continues to study how to treat her teeth. He declared that he would begin making a denture by utilizing information from old texts. As he worked, he noted to himself that he was carving boar tusks to create the teeth. Suddenly, Mona called him and asked why Risur-chan doesn't talk back to her. He thoughtfully suggested that perhaps the elf was still looking for a reason to want to talk. Upon hearing this, the young girl appeared surprised and deeply moved, her expression shifting to one of wonder and realization. She then went outside. As she went back inside, Mona joyfully presents the elf, who is now wearing a crown of flowers. She calls out to the apothecary to witness the transformation, proudly showcasing her handiwork. The apothecary softly complimented Mona's work, telling her she was very skilled and that the crown was very pretty. Mona asked him if the flower crown wasn't pretty and confidently claimed that Risur-chan would become his wife. Visibly shocked, the apothecary shouted in protest, insisting that she was only a patient he had brought there to heal her wounds. Mona teased him by pointing out that he had also said the elf was pretty. As she headed out, Mona bid Risur-chan farewell and said she would see her later. He contemplated the elf's recovery, noting that healing her wounded heart would have to be done little by little. He reflected that this healing process would occur through small, meaningful moments like the one they had just experienced. He initially noted that the elf's heartbeat was very weak, though he briefly wondered if the size of her chest was making it difficult to hear. After finishing his work in the lab, he complimented himself on a job well done while using some of his healing magic and also looking over the completed dentures. The man suggested to Risur-san that they try out the new teeth for the time being. He proposed that they celebrate the completion of her new teeth that evening. The man mentioned that they would have steak for dinner, prepared from meat gifted to him by a livestock farmer. The farmer enthusiastically offered the meat to him, though he privately noted his gratitude while worrying the portion was too large. He had marinated the soft parts of the meat in liquor and made fine cuts to ensure it was easier to chew. He invited Risur-san to begin eating. As he feeds her, he observed her eat, then asked how the food tasted. Risur-san responded with muffled sounds of approval as she chewed the steak. Risur-san appeared completely overwhelmed with wonder, as if experiencing a moment of profound clarity or joy for the first time. The apothecary looked on in silent amazement, clearly struck by the intensity of her reaction and the success of the meal. As the elf continues to eat, she begins to sniffle with emotion. The man gently reassures her, telling her not to worry because there is plenty of food remaining. He advises her to eat slowly, noting that it has been a long time since she last consumed solid food. The elf continues to chew her meal in silence, clearly moved by the experience. Risur couldn't help but cry. The man softly inquired if the food was delicious. The elf, unable to speak through her tears and a full mouth, offered a quiet affirmative sound while continuing to eat the meal he had prepared for her. The man softly asked Risur-san if being able to eat did not make her feel happy. He watched her with a kind expression as he continued to offer her the meal, acknowledging the emotional significance of her returning to a state where she could finally enjoy food again. From that day forward, Risur-san had gradually started to show signs of regaining her sensitivity. Mona bid Risur-chan farewell as she prepared to leave. He was privately mused that she might be able to speak sooner than he had initially thought. He concluded that her current state was a good sign. But suddenly, Risur's expression changed. He observes that Risur-san's appetite has been increasing lately and decides to prepare a beef stew since he has bacon on hand. However, the peaceful scene is suddenly interrupted when the elf suffers a violent coughing fit, causing him to call out her name in alarm as she collapses. He frantically called out Risur-san's name as he gathered her into his arms. He desperately questioned what was happening so suddenly. He noted to himself that her health had been stable recently and wondered why it had suddenly worsened. The elf could only manage labored, pained sounds as she struggled to breathe. Her chest was turning red. He noted that she was suffering from spasms and could not breathe well, and Risur-san's eyes were completely bloodshot. He identified the cause as neurotoxic venom from the obsidian spider, noting its powerful nature and its history of being used for assassination attempts. He frantically questioned when she had been poisoned, concluding that no one in the village would know about such a toxin and that the pawn shop owner was unlikely to be responsible. But he realized a strong possibility. He desperately wondered if it was her former master who had left her in such a terrible condition. He cursed the situation and told himself that if the poison was only just starting to take effect, then it was not too late to save her. He swore a firm oath that he would not let her die. He resolved to save Risur from the malice that was currently eating away at her. He explained that he would administer ground charcoal to empty her stomach and senna to counteract the poison. As he helps her drink the medicine, he urged Risur to let it all out as she struggled with the effects of the treatment. He questioned the motive behind the attack, wondering why they had poisoned her. After the elf expelled the contents of her stomach, he noticed an unusual object and wondered aloud if it was a pill. Upon closer inspection, he corrected himself, noting that it was too tough to be a pill and seemed more like a shell. He hypothesized that the object might have been inside her for a while and had only just dissolved enough to release the poison. The apothecary stared at the object and questioned if the symbols were an ancient language. He further speculated whether they were cursed markings. Overwhelmed by anger and confusion, he demanded to know what the hell the object was. He suddenly remembers a cruel man's face with the menacing, shadowy grin of the suspected perpetrator. He thinks that they used a delayed effect method so they would not be around when the poison actually took effect. A cruel sentiment associated with this act, that the victim could go die somewhere else so they wouldn't be the perpetrator's problem. He expressed outrage at the malicious intent behind it. Risur-san continued to make strained, heavy breathing sounds while unconscious. Unasked if the person she was looking at was indeed Risur-san, she observed with deep concern that the elf was really not looking good. while Mona was crying and trembling, softly calling out Risur-san's name in a state of heartbreak. The apothecary explained that while the cause was monster's poison, he needed to go collect ingredients to make a more effective antidote. An then reassured him that she and Mona could take care of Risur-san while he was away. He estimated that he would be back within 3 days and apologized for the situation. In addition to leaving her in their care, he provided them with written instructions on things they could do to help fight the poison's effects. As he was about to leave, he asked them to take care of funeral preparations if Risur-san were to pass away while he was gone. He explained his request by stating that he would have no way of knowing her status and did not want her body to just be left there. An solemnly confirmed that she understood his instructions. An suddenly called him sensei. An loudly declared that everything would be fine as she pushed the man forward. He looked back at her with a stunned and somewhat relieved expression, clearly caught off guard by her sudden burst of intense energy. She urged him to just focus on doing his part instead of worrying about things at home. She promised him that they would make sure to take good care of Risur-san while he was away. She expressed her firm belief that Risur-san would do her best to hold out until he returns. She emphatically told him to leave everything in their hands. Mona was also wiping away her tears, mirroring the shift from despair to hope. The apothecary, appearing much more at ease, offered his sincere thanks to them both. He looked down at the unconscious Risur-san and vowed that he would definitely save her. He softly pleaded for her to wait for him until he could return with the antidote. As he spoke, the elf lay still in bed, tears continuing to fall from her closed eyes as she struggled through her pained state. He continued his trek while carrying a heavy pack and a bow, remaining vigilant as he searched for the final ingredient. He successfully obtained a mandragora root. He used a pickaxe to mine element-converting mana quartz. And finally, he's now moving toward his final destination as he approached a dark cave entrance. The man identified the final ingredient as a sample of the original toxin, which required obtaining an obsidian spider's innards. He remembered that he had previously spent a few days tracking down and locating exactly where they lived. As he adjusted his gear, he mused that he never would have thought his prior research on the spiders would come in so handy. He set down his heavy pack and drew an arrow, preparing his bow to enter the dark cave. As he prepares to enter, he mused to himself that it had been a long time since he had held a weapon. He reflected that these old skills and the feeling of the bow were unexpectedly familiar to him. As he prepared for the hunt, he used his magic as a light source and cautiously entered the deep, dark cavern. The man entered the dark, jagged cavern while using his magic as a glowing light to see his way. He reassured himself that one would be there and that it would be fine, maintaining his focus on the mission. A bright glint or shine appeared in the darkness, signaling the presence of the creature he was hunting. Deeper inside, he discovered several large cocoons hanging from thick spiderwebs, indicating he had found the nest. He observed several animals wrapped in thick webbing hanging from the ceiling, confirming the predatory nature of the creature nearby. He surveyed the area and confirmed that he had found what he was looking for, exclaiming, "There!" With a focused and sharp expression, he drew an arrow from his quiver and notched it onto his bowstring. The man stood his ground in the center of the cavern, aiming his bow into the darkness as he prepared to release a shot. He stood firm against the massive, multi-eyed spider as it lunged toward him with its sharp legs and mandibles. The intensity of the confrontation was highlighted by the creature's aggressive screeching and his grim, unwavering resolve. He apologized to his prey, stating that he did not have any time to waste. In a moment of intense focus, he draws his bow and finally releases a shot that pierces through a giant spider with lethal precision. As the creature erupts in a spray of dark fluid, he somberly contemplates what the consequences would be if that particular scenario were to happen. He contemplates what he would do. With a steady hand and a sharp gaze, the apothecary draws back his bow and looses an arrow with lethal accuracy. The projectile finds its mark, causing the giant spider to erupt in a dark, visceral spray. Drawing his bow with renewed determination, he reflects on his old skills. Though he considers himself rusty due to a period of slacking, he realizes his current abilities are still sufficient to handle the threat. He firmly tells himself that his past actions are irrelevant to the present situation. He then remembers Risur, and he resolves that he must stay sharp for Risur-san's sake. He draws his bow again and releases a magical spell he called Aruma. The arrow surges forward with immense force, enveloped in light and energy. As he directs the strike toward his target, the magical arrow strikes with devastating impact, causing the creature to emit a high-pitched shriek of agony. Bathed in the radiant light of his own technique, he maintains his stance as the energy pierces through the monster. In a final, decisive strike, he stands firm as his continuous attack connects, causing the creature to explode into a mass of dark remnants and light. The force of the impact is so great that the spider's massive form is completely overwhelmed by the blast of energy. After the battle concludes, the apothecary catches his breath as he gathers the necessary materials from the fallen creature. He has secured the ingredients and states his intention to head back immediately, as he feels a sense of urgency to return to Risur-san. After working quickly to finish the antidote, the apothecary enters the room and apologizes to Risur-san for making her wait. An Mona looks at him as he now starts to apply the antidote. Gently supporting Risur, he leans in close to offer her quiet words of reassurance. He tells her that she will be fixed up soon and urges her to hold on for just a bit longer as he prepares to administer the treatment. Under a full moon, the apothecary sits at the bedside of a blonde elf who appears to be in distress. As she lies there, she utters a pained sound, her face tight with discomfort as he continues to watch over her. As he observes her, he notes that her breathing seems to have returned to normal and that the redness in her chest has subsided. Grasping her hand, he concludes that the worst of her ordeal has likely passed. He assures the elf that everything is gonna be okay and that she's going to be fine. As he gazes down at her with a look of exhaustion and relief, she weakly opens one eye as he whispers her name. In a dark and surreal vision, the elf appears submerged or entangled within a mass of thick, winding roots or vines. As she drifts in the darkness, she observes the strange, liquid-like bubbles floating around her and notes the shadowy tendrils that seem to be constricting her body. In a shimmering light that pierces through the dark vines of her vision, the elf sees a hand reaching down toward her. As the light intensifies, she hears comforting voices reassuring her that everything is okay and that she is going to be fine. A person calls her name, her gaze fixed on the hand as it is reflected clearly within her eye. Waking from her nightmare, she opens her eyes to find herself back in the physical world. Her gaze softens as she looks toward the source of the light, her eyes beginning to clear and reflect the room around her. The apothecary is momentarily blinded by a sudden, intense flash of light, causing him to wonder aloud about what it is. As the brilliance fades, the elf fully regains consciousness and he weakly calls out to her by name. Risur begins to stir, softly acknowledging her surroundings. He gazes at her with an expression of profound relief, gently noting that she has finally woken up. Her eye glistens with a tear as she looks back at him. He asks if she is able to see clearly. She replies that she cannot quite see yet, but notes that she can feel his presence there. Observing her response, he was surprised but was also relieved that she is able to speak again and expresses how deeply glad he is. The apothecary asks her to sit up so he can examine her, to which she agrees. As he begins his assessment, he notes slight muscle movement and observes that her poison, fever, and chest redness have all subsided. Upon inspecting her eyes, he realizes that while her vision has not fully returned, her pupils are reacting as it can now detect light. He speculates that a combination of mandragora and magic quartz may have stimulated her optic nerves while counteracting the poison, potentially triggering recovery in the damaged areas. The elf starts crying, which startled him, so he asked if she's feeling okay or if it hurts anywhere. Elf then mentions the name that he bestowed upon her, which is Risur, and asked if that's her name now. He then apologizes for not knowing her real name and explains that he had given her one of his own making. He then gently asks if she would like to tell him her actual name. The elf then admits that she does not remember anything, even her own name. He reflects on the situation, identifying it as retrograde amnesia. He expresses concern over how the elf will return to her home, noting that her people live in areas hidden from other races. He determines that there must be something he can do to ensure she gets home safely. Risur then starts to say something to him. Risur then looks at him with tears of gratitude in her eyes. She thanks him very much for saving her life. He was stunned by her gratitude, as if time suddenly stopped. He closed his eyes and realized this is his purpose now. But he couldn't help but ask himself why he's being so pessimistic. He reassures Risur that from now on, she will be fine because he'll make sure of it, to fully heal her completely. And Risur cries again in gratitude. This will be the start of her rehabilitation journey. In the next day, while An was preparing something in the kitchen, she was happy to see Risur, who's now in good shape. She volunteers that she'll bake a cake to celebrate her recovery and asked if she likes sweets. Risur replies that she do like sweets as Mona keeps on smiling and laughing beside her. The apothecary arrives and apologizes to An. He then volunteers to help too. But An wasn't having that and told him to sit so he could rest. She knows that he's been deprived of sleep for taking care of Risur all this time, and even Mona sees the huge eye bags that are now pretty visible under his eyes. Looking haggard and weary, he asks if he truly looks that bad, to which they bluntly confirm that he does. expresses her relief that Risuru-chan has finally woken up, adding that they wouldn't know what to do if he ended up collapsing as well. She then hands him a steaming mug, telling him that it is for him. She offers him a warm drink, remarking that everyone needs assistance from time to time and encouraging him to leave the situation to her. He quickly relents, thanking her and deciding to accept her help. An initially insists that she can handle it herself, so he shouldn't worry. As he sighs over his drink, the room settles into a quiet, domestic atmosphere. Nearby, Mona engages Risuru in cheerful conversation, while she watches the man with a soft, knowing expression. He looks on at the pair with a sense of quiet exhaustion, eventually closing his eyes as a hint of peace finally crosses his face. As he drifts off, a sudden memory or vision of his past surfaces. He sees a younger version of himself running breathlessly as an unseen pursuer shouts for him to stop and labels him a thief. The memory is punctuated by the feeling of being roughly seized by the collar as he tries to escape. The boy is pursued by aggressive villagers who warn him not to think he is safe just because he is a child as they beat him up. Some kids even threw stones at him and commanded him to stay away from their village and ordered him to get out of here. They harshly tell him to beat it, leaving him to limp away in pain and isolation. Alone beneath the shade of a large tree, the young boy curls into himself, seeking refuge from the world that rejected him. He sits in silence, huddled with his arms around his legs as the vast, empty field stretches out before him. His eyes, heavy with a profound and weary sadness, stare blankly ahead as he eventually lowers his head to rest against his arms. He looks up in surprise as a pair of boots enters his field of vision. He notes with curiosity that the stranger has horns. The newcomer, a large figure carrying a massive sword, asks him why he is all alone and observes that he looks hungry. The horned warrior extends an open hand toward the boy, inviting him to come along and promising to provide him with some food. The boy gazes up in quiet wonder as he is led away from his isolation. The warrior reaches down, grasping his hand firmly to help him up. He speaks to him with gentle encouragement, urging him to come along. Sitting by a small campfire, the young boy hungrily eats a bowl of stew while the warrior watches over him. As the boy eats, the warrior gently advises him to make sure he eats slowly. The warrior beams with a wide smile, asking the young boy if the food is good. As the scene transitions back to the present, Mona holds out a piece of cake on a fork. Watching them from across the table, the apothecary remains silent, lost in thought as he observes their cheerful interaction. Mona then playfully asks Risuru-chan if it tastes good. Risuru agrees that the food is sweet and incredibly delicious. He watches her with a weary, melancholic expression, seemingly moved by her joy while remaining silent. In this final sequence, the memory of the young boy tearfully affirming that the food is good overlays the present moment. As he watches with a single, glistening eye, An laughs softly, remarking that if the meal could put such an expression on their faces, then all her effort was truly worth it. He reflects on his own past, acknowledging that he was once exactly like the child in his memories. As images of the warrior saving him and himself helping the elf woman overlap, he realizes that he is only alive today because of the kindness and support of someone. An asks if he is ready to eat now that he is awake, to which he confirms and thanks her for the cooking. His quiet meal is suddenly interrupted by a knocking at the window. He looks up in surprise to find a crow has arrived, delivering a sealed scroll onto the windowsill. When An asks what the message is, he explains that it is a reply from an old friend whom he had asked about Risuru-san. The letter states that it has been a long time since the writer examined an elf's body and that they are interested enough to take a look. The writer adds that they need money and assumes the man has some saved up. Reading this, he sweatily sighs that the sender is as crude as always. He emphasizes his desperate need for the correspondent's help to examine the necrosis affecting the Risurer's limbs. He grimly notes that without this intervention, the only remaining solution might be the amputation of her arms and legs. As the pair begins their journey to visit an old friend, An and Mona waved at them and telling them to be careful, also wishing them a good trip. He carries the injured elf on his back, ready to set off on their next chapter. As the pair trek through the wilderness, the apothecary explained that they would be traveling north to visit a friend's place, noting that their path led through the forest first. He mentioned a teleportation shop in the mountain town of Karuga and suggested they head there. Risuru asked if it was like a portal, and he confirmed that they could use it to warp instantly to a town in the north. After she acknowledged this, he added that he had one more thing to do and placed a necklace on her. He instructs her that if she channels her magic power into the charm, it can be used to send out a distress signal. While he admits he doesn't expect them to be separated, he emphasizes that it will be a long journey and asks her to keep the necklace's function in mind just in case. She softly agrees, acknowledging his precaution as they move forward. As he continues to carry her through the woods, Risur hesitantly apologizes in case she is too heavy for him. He reassures her with a smile, explaining that he usually carries a large amount of medicine ingredients on his back, so carrying her is actually lighter than his normal load. Hearing this, she remains quiet, resting her head against him as they travel. As the sun begins to set, he decides that they should settle in for the night at their current location. They set up a small camp with a fire and some food, but a heavy silence falls between them. Even though she's now able to talk, the apothecary has no idea what to say to her. Breaking the silence by the fire, Risur hesitantly asks him if she can know his name. He appears caught off guard by the question, repeating the word to himself as he realizes he hasn't shared that piece of information with her yet. Risur was kind of surprised about his reaction, that it seems he doesn't want to say it. As he was about to say his name, he changed his mind and instead, he told her that he can just call him apothecary, which shocks Risur. She beams at him, saying that it is nice to meet Mr. Apothecary. He agrees and returns the sentiment. Internally, he justifies his decision by thinking that she doesn't need to know much about him. In a moment of grim introspection, he thinks to himself that he has not yet earned the right to share anything about himself with anyone. He resolves that until he finishes the woman's treatment and brings her home, his only priority must be her safety. However, his focus is suddenly broken as he senses a threat, quickly drawing his blade to protect her as she looks on in surprise. In a sudden intense moment, the man's suspicions are confirmed as a massive, towering bear emerges from the darkness behind them. He identifies the creature with alarm as a king grizzly, his expression hardening as he prepares to defend his companion against the formidable beast. Faced with the massive beast, he knows that such creatures are especially savage and dangerous right before hibernation. He considers that while he could easily move or escape if he were alone, it would be too difficult to run away while protecting his companion. Seeing no other way to ensure her safety, he prepares himself for a direct confrontation, concluding that he has no choice but to fight. In a stunning turn of events, Risur suddenly lets out a powerful, melodic cry that fills the air with shimmering musical notes. The sound creates a visible aura of magic around her, causing the man to stop in his tracks and look back in utter shock. The sheer force of her song seems to radiate outward, momentarily shifting the focus away from the impending threat of the beast. Its effect on the massive beast is immediate and profound. The king grizzly, which had been roaring in a savage fury moments before, suddenly falls silent as the shimmering musical notes drift around it. The apothecary watches in stunned silence as the bear simply turns away from the camp and wanders back into the darkness of the woods. With a gentle smile, she reassures him that everything will be okay, leaving him to stare after the retreating creature in disbelief. Stunned by the display of her mysterious power by the elf, he asked Risur-san if she possesses the ability to speak with animals. She admits that she isn't entirely sure, but she notes that the bear seemed to be frightened. He was shocked in disbelief, questioning why a beast like that would be scared. He thanked her and notes that her actions were a big help. As she offers a small, quiet smile, he reflects privately on the situation. He finds it deeply unsettling that a creature as powerful as a king grizzly could be that frightened of something, wondering what kind of threat could possibly be strong enough to scare it off. In a flashback to the previous day, the apothecary finds himself in an incredibly awkward situation, sweating under the cold, judgmental glares of two women. A question lingers: how did he ended up in such a state while trying to procure a dress? Before he went here, An told him that since he is heading north, he will need warm clothes for Risur-chan, offering up some of her own spare garments to help them out. The borrowed clothes turn out to be a massive problem, as Risur-chan is completely buried under the oversized winter gear. Seeing her struggle, the apothecary notes that he had figured the clothes would be too big since they belong to An. He decides he will head into town to buy something that fits her properly. An also suggests that he should pick up some appropriate underwear for her as well. As the apothecary awkwardly agrees while Risur told him she will be fine. An bids him good luck while mentioning that she will stay behind to care for the other patient and the child. Returning to the present, the apothecary finds himself in a women's clothing store, feeling completely out of place and under the suspicious gaze of the female employees. He inwardly laments that the situation is more tense than his previous encounter at an obsidian spider's nest. Despite his discomfort, he really needs to get some winter clothes and a set of underwear for Risur-san, so he had no choice but to approach one of the staff members, admitting that he is unsure how to judge the correct sizes. The girl asked if he's buying this for himself. In a panic, he frantically denies it and tells the shopkeepers that the items are for his sick sister. The girl complimented him for being a kind brother, but she also asked what exactly is wrong with his sister. He then tells her that she's just in bad shape, that's why he's the one shopping for her. They weren't satisfied with his answers and was suspicious, so they asked what part of her body is having some trouble. He clumsily explains that her entire body is the problem. He adds that she simply has a lot of bad parts. The store employees remain completely unconvinced, internally labeling the man as a terrible liar as they ask for his sister's exact age. He fumbles further, initially guessing she might be younger before second-guessing himself and wondering if she is actually older, given that elves live such long lives. The women's glares intensify into a dark, looming suspicion as they conclude that absolutely nothing he is saying is true. On the day of their departure, the new clothes are a huge success, and everyone marvels at how cute Risuru-chan looks in her new outfit. She shyly thanks the apothecary for the gift, while Anemona praises him for his success. Despite the warm atmosphere, the apothecary looks exhausted and traumatized, unable to shake the memory of the cold, judgmental stares from the shop employees. As the morning light filters through the dense canopy, a heavy unease settles over the apothecary. He observes that while everything seemed normal until that morning, the forest has since become unnervingly quiet, devoid of any animal life. Perspiring from the tension, he notes that there is something strange about the woods and suggests to his companion that they should hurry through the area. Risuru tentatively calls out to him, sensing the shifting atmosphere. Visible trembling and wide-eyed with fear, she alerts the apothecary that something is approaching their position. And so, he prepares for it immediately. Reacting with sharp focus, the apothecary asked if she can determine the direction the threat is coming from. She clarifies that she cannot, but warns him that the entity is massive and expresses that she has a very bad feeling about the situation. He then thinks of a way as he continues to observe their surroundings. A massive, shimmering serpent emerges from the foliage, towering over the duo. As the apothecary stares up at the giant creature in a cold sweat, he realizes that its presence explains why the forest had become so unnervingly silent. He identifies the creature as the likely cause of the bear's earlier flight. Realizing the mutated variant has already noticed them, the apothecary concludes he has no choice but to fight, and consumes a strengthening potion he had reserved for emergencies. As he prepares his weapon, he tells Risuru-san that she will have to wait there for a bit. He then explains that he will use Aruma to vibrate the blade with magic. In a moment of high tension, the apothecary and the giant serpent come face to face, with the creature letting out a menacing hiss. The sudden, close-range confrontation leaves Risuru-san visibly startled as she realizes just how close the threat has become. Moving with explosive speed, the apothecary launches himself toward the massive serpent as it strikes with its jaws wide open. He expertly maneuvers through the air, diving beneath the creature's head to deliver a powerful, magic-enhanced blow to its body. In a spray of blood, the apothecary successfully slashes the side of the serpent with his enchanted blade. Letting out a sharp shout, he lands gracefully back on the ground, keeping his guard up as the wounded creature reels from the impact. He then jumps midair to dodge the serpent's tail, then he follows it through by plunging his blade deep into the creature's back with a forceful shout. He successfully grounds the serpent, pinning a section of its massive body to the earth as blood sprays from the wound. Despite the successful strike, he remains alert, glancing back as the beast lets out a pained hiss and its tail lashes out nearby. His blade is seen embedded deeply into the serpent's scales after his decisive strike. Below, the massive creature lets out a deafening hiss of pain as the apothecary stands his ground, magic still radiating from his hands as he prepares for the next phase of the confrontation. In a display of immense power, the apothecary performs a massive vertical slash that cuts through the serpent's thick body. As the creature's blood sprays across the area, the force of his magic-enhanced strike leaves the giant beast severely wounded and collapsing to the ground. He stands over the remains of the defeated creature, which has been torn apart by his final, magic-enhanced strike. Heavy breathing fills the air as the apothecary begins to catch his breath after the intense struggle. As the adrenaline fades, he takes a moment to wipe the blood from his blade and steady himself, acknowledging the toll the battle took on his equipment and stamina. Approaching Risuru-san after the dust settles, the apothecary apologizes for making her wait. She was so relieved to hear his voice again. He reassures her that it is safe now, explaining that had they left the creature alone, it likely would have caused damage to the nearby villages. Risuru understands his sentiment. Examining his hand, the apothecary notes that while the injury does not appear too severe, he decides he should probably use an antidote just in case. A worried Risuru-san tentatively asks if his wound is going to be okay. Dismissing the injury as just a scratch and no big deal, the apothecary suggests they get moving since they are almost at their destination. Risuru expresses her relief, observing that he remains the same kind apothecary he has always been. Upon arriving in Karuga, the apothecary notes that they should hurry to the teleportation shop to reach the northern town. He mentions that while his friend is somewhat eccentric, his medical skills are exceptional. He reassures Risur that it will only be a little longer, to which she quietly agrees. An older man in glasses, which is the clerk, flatly states that he is afraid he will have to refuse. The apothecary expresses confusion in response to the denial. While the older man stares intensely, Risur trembles in silence. The clerk states that he is unable to bring that long-eared companion of his along for the teleportation. He mentions that while it is not strictly disallowed, some individuals have specific preferences or tastes in these matters. He was visibly upset by the use of a derogatory term long-ear and demands the old man to hold on a second. He insists that the girl is his patient and that they are traveling north specifically to get her medical treatment. The clerk dismissively acknowledges the explanation but clarifies that the teleportation service is strictly for humans only. He smugly remarks that her non-human identity is obvious from her eye, skin, and hair color, despite her hood. The apothecary grits his teeth, internally reflecting on rumors he had heard about teleport clerks picking up elitist habits from their high-class clientele. The clerk suggests that if he truly insists, there is an alternative option available and smirks that he can fill out an application for special cargo and pay the associated fees that come with it. Stunned by the term, he repeats the phrase special cargo in disbelief. Sensing the tension, Risur timidly tries to get the apothecary's attention. She apologizes for causing the apothecary so much trouble. She tearfully expresses that he really shouldn't have gone to such lengths for her. Hearing that, he was about to snap. But the apothecary tells himself that he needs to hold back his anger. He reasons that if he loses his temper, she is the one who would ultimately suffer. He asks the clerk if he could pay double the fee to have them both sent off immediately. He then stares him dead in the eye and asked if he could kindly just do that. The clerk sensed the danger he's in and got scared. Terrified by the apothecary's overwhelming and dark aura, the clerk's attitude shifts instantly from smugness to panic. He frantically stammers that he will get everything ready immediately and asks for just a moment of patience. Risur calls him, but the apothecary told her with a gentle smile that it looks like the man is going to send them over. He asks her if that isn't nice, to which she brightens up and joyfully agrees. The teleportation circle activates as he nervously informs him that there is no need for the extra charge he previously requested. He adds that the apothecary can simply pay the standard fee upon arriving at his destination. Looking somber as he begins to vanish, the apothecary thanks the clerk for his consideration. As the teleportation circle reaches full power, the apothecary and his companion prepare for departure while the clerk watches in a cold sweat. He even said that the apothecary is not a respectable man and he really thought he was gone. A local official welcomes the pair to the northern town of Nosebear. The apothecary addresses Risur-san to check on her well-being. He asks her if she is feeling sick or tired from the effects of the teleportation. Risur-san softly reassures the apothecary that she is fine and asks if he is doing okay as well. The apothecary confirms he is fine and suggests that they find a place to stop and eat dinner for the night. He mentions that the town features a local dish called shijirope, which he describes as a type of fried bread. The dish is stuffed with meat, vegetables, and cheese. Hearing that, Risur seems thrilled to taste it as they proceed to the place. As the food has been served, they immediately started eating. Risur-san happily notes that the shijirope is incredibly crispy, juicy, and tasty. The apothecary admits that he hadn't expected her to enjoy greasy foods, such as steak, so much. While they eat, he reflects on the bad experience they had at the teleportation shop and expresses his hope that this meal helps smooth things over for her. After they ate, they went to an inn to rest for the night. They ended up sharing a bed because they could only get a room with one bed. Despite their polite argument, the two eventually end up lying in the bed together in stiff, nervous silence. Earlier that night, he insists to Risur that he will just sleep on the floor. But Risur-san objects, telling him that he should rest and offering that she can take the floor instead. The apothecary glances over at Risur-san, who has fallen into a peaceful, deep sleep. He watches the soft rise and fall of her breath and notices the light reflecting in her eyes as she sleeps. He sighs quietly to himself, appearing both tired and deeply contemplative as he continues to stare at her. The apothecary reflects that things have gone well so far and that there is only a little further to go. He silently promises Risur-san that they will be at their destination soon. Holding on to the determined thought that he will definitely get her fixed up, he finally drifts off to sleep beside her. Despite being close to their goal, an unexpected incident may be about to occur. He uses snowshoes to navigate the difficult terrain while shielding his eyes from the biting wind. Amidst a heavy blizzard, the apothecary is shown breathing heavily and struggling through the deep snow. The apothecary internally notes that it is becoming increasingly difficult for him to breathe and his entire body is starting to go numb from the intense cold. Noticing his visible distress, Risur asks him if he is doing okay. He weakly reassures her that he is fine and tells her not to worry. He internally suspects that his symptoms might not just be caused by exhaustion. Looking at his bandaged hand, he realizes that if the wound caused by the monster serpent he fought is the source of his distress, he is in serious trouble. The pair suddenly stops as they notice a dark opening or cave entrance up ahead. They decide to rest on the cave. After starting a fire, the apothecary suggests that they warm up some of the soup they brought with them from the inn. The two sit together by the fire, still shivering and breathing heavily from their ordeal in the snow. He begins preparing the food to help them recover their strength while the storm continues outside. Risur-san gazes at the apothecary with deep concern, asking him if he is really okay and pleading with him not to push himself. Despite his visible exhaustion and heavy breathing, the apothecary offers a weak smile and claims that he is just a bit tired. He apologizes for allowing himself to get into such a depleted state. Risur-san looks down sadly, reassuring him that it is really okay and that he shouldn't apologize. With a gentle, pained smile, the apothecary tells Risur-san that the soup is ready and encourages her to have some. Risur-san looks on with wide, tearful eyes as the apothecary's bandaged hand holds out a spoonful of the warm liquid. As she begins to eat, she softly apologizes again, her expression filled with a mixture of sadness and gratitude. The next day, they continue their journey in the midst of the snowstorm. He admits to himself that he overestimated his own strength once again and laments that this tendency is a bad habit of his and that he should have noticed his decline much sooner. He really thought that he could push himself too hard, thinking he could simply power through the illness. As he falters, two mysterious, dark figures standing in the distance appear, silently watching his struggle. He attempts to apologize to Risur-san, struggling to say that he just needs a moment. He realizes he is losing his grip on reality, noting that the words won't come out and he can't think straight. In a desperate attempt to get help, he considers using a magic signal flare as a small magical circle appears near his hand. He pleads with himself not to collapse, reminding himself that he hasn't saved Risur-san yet. Risur realizes something's not right. Risur-san cries out in shock as the apothecary falls, desperately calling out to Mr. Apothecary. She remains strapped to his back, looking on with wide, terrified eyes as he lies motionless in the blizzard. She asks him if he is all right, though he appears unable to respond. Risur-san cries out in distress as she realizes the apothecary has fallen unconscious in the snow. She internally laments that she cannot move and cannot even see him, making her feel powerless to help him. She reflects on how he has come all this way for her sake despite his own physical suffering. She desperately wonders if there is truly nothing she can do for him as they both lie stranded in the blizzard. Driven by a desperate need to help, Risur-san tells herself that she must do something. She remembers the amulet the apothecary gave her, recalling his instructions that putting magic power into it allows it to send a distress signal. Determined to repay his kindness, she declares that this time, she will be the one who does something for him. Risur-san desperately pleads for someone to save Mr. Apothecary as he lies motionless in the snow. She pushes herself to provide more power to the amulet, urging it to keep shining brighter. The magical signal becomes a massive, vertical pillar of light that cuts through the blizzard, visible from a great distance. Risur-san recalls the many ways the apothecary has helped her, noting that he saved her from a dark place. How he reassured her in his calm voice and even got mad on her behalf when others mistreated her. Looking at his unconscious form, she realizes he did all that for her sake. With her remaining strength, she sends out a final, desperate plea for someone to save this kind man. As she pours her magic into the device, the amulet suddenly cracks under the strain, its surface fracturing with a sharp sound. Risur-san reacts with despair, realizing that the signal is failing and she can no longer maintain the pillar of light. She begins to lose consciousness herself, collapsing onto the apothecary's back as she weakly tells herself she has to keep going. With her final fading thought, she desperately repeats her plea that someone still has to save him. She weakly calls out to Mr. Apothecary as she looks at him with fading eyes. Risur continues to weep, realizing that her efforts to signal for help are ultimately no use. In a final display of selflessness, she thinks that if she can just cover him up with her body, she might be able to warm him up a bit. She struggles with her remaining strength to move her hands, hoping to simply hold his. She then collapsed as she cries over his back. As Risur-san loses consciousness, she continues to cry out a final, faint prayer for someone to please save Mr. Apothecary. A mysterious shadow approaches the two of them through the heavy snow, its large boots making heavy tracks as it nears their location. The figure is dressed in heavy, dark winter gear with a hood and a mask, making their identity impossible to discern. The scene ends on a cliffhanger, questioning whether this approaching shadow is a friend or foe. In a flashback, a large, muscular man with a horn and a bandaged face calls out to a man named Adam, asking him to take a look at a young child. The man, identified as Adam, initially refuses, claiming he is far too busy with his research. Adam dismissively remarks that if he is going to be brought something, he would prefer a fresh body instead of the child, whom he refers to as Kurosuke. The large man defends the boy, insisting that he is a good kid and shouldn't be spoken of that way. The young boy wonders what Kurosuke means, looks on with a blank, tired expression as Adam eventually relents with a sigh and takes the child's hand to begin an examination. As Adam takes his hand, the young apothecary is struck by how cold and stitched together the man's hands feel. He describes the man's aura as being like a snake. This comparison is punctuated by a close-up of a piercing, reptilian eye staring intensely at the boy. Adam expresses his frustration with the examination, callously asking what the point is if he isn't allowed to remove a part or two. The memory transitions back to the present day, showing the adult apothecary looking troubled and sweating as he relives these dark thoughts. The apothecary opens his eyes while lying in a warm bed, realizing he has just had another dream from his past. He looks around the room in confusion, weakly questioning where he is as he tries to get his bearings. A voice from off-screen notes that he is finally awake and addresses him by the name from his dream, Kurosuke. Finally, we now know what his name is. Upon hearing that name, the apothecary reacts with a startled expression. A woman with reptilian eyes and stitched skin sits by the apothecary's bed, holding a glass of wine and scolding him for stopping his follow-ups with the doctor again. Standing behind her is the large, muscular man from the apothecary's memories, whose face and body are also covered in surgical stitches. He gazes up at the person, recognizing him instantly and addressing him as Adam-san. He reflects on the passage of time, noting that it has been a while and observing how much Adam's appearance has changed since they last met. Adam, who is seated nearby, tells him that he is only able to speak now because of the efforts of Gauche and an elf. He and the elf nearly died in a ditch if Gauche haven't found them. Visible distressed, he asks if the elf, Risur-san, is all right. Adam reassures him that the elf is fine and currently sleeping in the next room. She explains that it was only because the elf used her magic until it was completely depleted that Gauche managed to locate them, and suggests that he can thank her once she wakes up. Kurosuke looks down somberly, quietly absorbing the information he has just been told. When he tries to explain that he was injured after running into a monster on the way, Adam erupts in anger and shouts that his injury was merely the last straw and that his real problem was overworking himself like an idiot. She berates him for fighting monsters while being so weak and tells him that this is the result of rushing in without thinking. Calling him a meathead, she demands that he use his brain for once and criticizes his habit of hesitating until the last second. After her outburst, Adam calms down and acknowledges that he's at least safe now. Kurosuke looks away dejectedly and offers a quiet apology. However, her mood shifts instantly as she leans in with a wide, predatory grin, asking him if he has any money. He admits that he did bring some, but the large man intervenes, telling him that he would have plenty if he would just do some actual work. Adam immediately shouts her refusal to work. He was the eccentric immortal back alley Dr. Adamska, a demolic who sacrificed his original form for research and now inhabits a body constructed from the parts of others. He explains that his vast wisdom is simply the result of satisfying his own curiosity. The scene then shifts back to the present, where Kurosuke presents a significant stack of coins and gems, asking if the amount is sufficient. The doctor gleefully confirms that it is more than enough and notes that he will have no trouble collecting more body parts for a while. Adam decides she should check on the elf next, prompting Kurosuke that he will go with her. However, the large man Gauche suddenly snaps chains onto his wrists and ankles, pinning him to the bed as he shouts in shock. As Adam and Gauche prepare to leave, she tells the restrained Kurosuke to simply stay quiet for a while. She assures him that he should not worry because she'll make sure to give her a thorough examination. He should leave the matter to her and her Aruma. Kurosuke pleads that she do that. Adam suddenly laughs and said it's been a while since she worked on elf bones. Hearing that, Kurosuke panics and suggests he should really go with her. Inside a secluded building overlooking a snowy landscape, Adam prepares to experiment on Risur that's restrained to a table. She signals the start of the procedure by stating that it is time to begin. As she crosses her arms, she chants a command for the Aruma to activate, causing a large, runic eye to glow with power. As the command is given, a large, runic eye begins to glow, unleashing a surge of magical energy. Intricate geometric circles and crackling bolts of light manifest around the experimenter's hands and over the body of the unconscious subject, signaling the start of the procedure. During a meal at the remote manor, Adam notes that Risuer's in a very interesting state. The patient's skin and organs appear to be recovering and commends Kurosuke's treatment as being effective. He finds this news reassuring, but Adam then pauses to specifically address the condition of the elf's eyes and limbs, prompting an expectant response from him. Adam explains that her right eye has been deliberately blocked by magic to spare her from seeing, while her left eye remains but is no longer connected to any nerves. Kurosuke reflects on this, suggesting that the blockage must be a defense mechanism designed to protect her body and mind, and to protect her from having to see more terrible things. As he clenches his fist in frustration, Adam shifts the conversation to the condition of the subject's limbs. Adam reveals that despite a lack of external wounds, a rotting curse is causing an infection to spread through her limbs. She notes that while the progression is slow, likely due to the natural regenerative abilities of elves, the curse can only be delayed, not stopped. When he desperately asks if a cure exists, Adam solemnly suggests that he likely already knows the answer for that. Adam warns that if the situation remains unaddressed, the infection spreading through her limbs could become life-threatening. Risuer then wakes up and tries to call the apothecary. While cutting into her meal, Adam matter-of-factly concludes that she will simply have to remove all 4 of the subject's limbs. A heavy silence hangs in the hallway as the apothecary reflects on a grim medical reality, noting that all 4 limbs would have to be removed and that the situation could become life-threatening if left alone. Inside Risuer's room, Ghosh carries a tray toward her sitting in bed. She looks up and offers her sincere thanks. He then enters the room, apologizing for the intrusion and calls on Risuer-san. Her eyes well with tears as she softly calls out to the apothecary. Through a fragile, relieved smile, she expresses how deeply glad she is that he is all right. The apothecary remains silent, his expression obscured by shadow and a faint blush, visibly moved by her concern. She thanked her, but he dismisses her gratitude and said it was actually thanks to her. The apothecary sits beside her bed. Though she insistently thanks him again and laments that she couldn't do much in her weakened state, he gently reminds her that she actually saved them by using her amulet to call for help. His expression soon turns somber. Looking away, he apologizes and admits that his own miscalculation was what had put them both at risk. Noticing his heavy silence, Risuer tentatively asks the apothecary if something is wrong. He hesitates before explaining that while his friend had examined her, her limbs were in much worse condition than he had initially anticipated. With a pained expression, he admits that at this rate, her very life could be at risk. Deeply troubled, the apothecary bows his head, explaining that the current situation requires them to amputate her limbs right then and there. Risuer sits quietly in her hospital bed, absorbing the weight of the grim news as he struggles to even look her in the eye. Risuer remains silent even after hearing the grim news. The apothecary mentions his trust in the doctor, Adam Sands, skills and assures her that he will also be present during the surgery. As he looks at her, he privately agonizes over how anxious his words must be making her. Seeing the sheer terror in her eyes, he laments that he never wanted her to have to make such a sad face again. He hunches over in a deep bow, his voice thick with regret as he apologizes to Risuer-san and laments that his own efforts simply weren't enough. Risuer remains quiet for a long moment, the silence of the hospital room only broken when she softly calls him. Risuer gently reassures him that everything is fine because she believes in him. Although she mentions that she has not yet met the doctor, she explains that she is already familiar with the apothecary's kindness and his medical expertise. Risuer looks at him with a tearful but gentle smile, expressing her certainty that the surgery will be fine since they will be doing it together. The apothecary stares back at her, his wide eyes reflecting a mixture of shock and profound emotion at her unwavering confidence in him. The apothecary gently places a hand on Risuer's shoulder and expresses his deep gratitude to her. He calls her name and encourages them both to do their absolute best. Her eyes still glistening with tears, softly agrees as they face the difficult path ahead together. Ghosh watches the pair from the hallway, joined by Adam in a white coat. The apothecary continues to comfort Risuer-san by her bedside inside the room. Outside, the building stands isolated against mountains as preparations for the procedure begin, indicated by the snapping of surgical gloves and a tray of sharpened medical instruments. As they're about to start, Dr. Adam announces that it is time to begin the procedure. Adam reveals that she has found an arm and a leg in cold storage that appear to be a good fit. She explains that using these replacements will prevent the patient from losing all 4 limbs, noting that they are in much better condition than the patient's current, rotting ones. She adds a sober warning, telling Risur that while the procedure is necessary, the rehabilitation afterward will be incredibly difficult and she should prepare herself. As she is being prepped, the apothecary looks at her, reassuring Risur-san that it will be all right. She looks back at him and says that she will be in his care. In a clinical, high-stakes atmosphere, the lead surgeon Dr. Adam takes charge, delegating the most critical task to the apothecary. She instructs him to handle the cross-section in the amputation itself, while she commits to cleaning up the flesh and bone near the severed areas. He acknowledges the plan with firm understanding. The apothecary calls out Risur-san's name. In a hazy memory or final thought before the procedure truly takes hold echoes her unwavering belief in him, recalling her trust in the apothecary. He then uses his skill aroma while stealing his resolve as he prepares to proceed with the surgery, his tools ready and his focus absolute. As he's about to use the surgical blade down toward her limb to begin the final life-saving effort, he told himself that because Risur believed in him from the bottom of her heart, he had to do his absolute best for her sake. With intense determination in his eyes, the apothecary focuses on the operation. Following the surgery, the apothecary stares down at his trembling, bandaged hands in a quiet, exhausted daze. Adam notes that it is only natural for him to feel tired after removing his companion's flesh and bone to save her. Though he remains silent, Adam claims she can tell exactly what he is thinking just by looking at his face, remarking that a muscle head like him doesn't need to say a word. The apothecary watches Adam tends to the still unconscious Risur, carefully adjusting the bandages on her newly attached limbs. Turning toward the doctor with a look of quiet sincerity, he offers her his heartfelt thanks for finding replacement parts that were compatible with Risur's body. She casually brushes off his gratitude, claiming that the procedure was merely a simple experiment for her. She becomes visibly excited while examining the new limb, noting that the arm is a rare, well-preserved specimen from a high elf and is filled with immense magic energy. Giddy with scientific curiosity, she explains that attaching a high elf's limb to a regular elf will provide valuable experimental data regarding how their magical circuits reconnect. Observing her obsessive behavior, the apothecary deadpans a request for her to at least stop rubbing the girl's arm. Risur slowly opens her eyes, he then asks her how is she feeling. She adds that she feels fine and continues to ask if the procedure is already over. The apothecary, visibly relieved, confirms that they made it through with no problems and notes that there doesn't seem to be any more decay. The apothecary gently helps Risur sit up, then he asks if can she still not feel anything, warning her that she might begin to feel pain soon. Risur remarks that her body feels strangely light. He mentions that they have painkillers available and encourages her not to hesitate to ask for them if it starts to hurt. She then turns her attention to her new arm and leg. The apothecary told her that they attached those just fine as it perfectly fits her small frame. Because of it, Risur couldn't hold back her tears and cried again as per usual. Risur thanked all of them for helping her. Adam then explains that she will remain immobile until her nerves and magical pathways recover, adding that she has no intention of assisting with the necessary physical rehab. The apothecary quickly interjects, agreeing and stating that he will handle that aspect of her recovery himself. Adam also notes that the apothecary, Kurosuke, has not yet fully recovered from his fatigue. She explains that both of them need to remain for observation. Risur repeats the name Kurosuke with a look of confusion, prompting the man to sweat nervously as he privately reflects that it was the name he had given him when he was little. Adam calls him again and tells him to listen carefully. Adam then aggressively asserts her dominance, pointing a finger at Kurosuke and declaring that both he and Ghosh will serve as her arms and legs once he recovers from his exhaustion. She smugly reminds him that this is the second time she has managed to save his life. With an intense, intimidating stare, she concludes that he must work as if his life depends on it, asking if he understands. A few days later, she informs them that their task for the day is to organize the cold storage. Adam brought Ghosh and Kurosuke to a massive, frozen warehouse filled with hanging parcels and crates. With a playful but ominous smile, she warns him not to get lost inside, or he might freeze to death. Shivering in the freezing cold storage, he finally understands the warning to work as if his life depends on it. He reflects that the mountain of body parts around him exists because of the doctor whose own body requires them. He notes that this gruesome requirement stems from a failed experiment in that person's past, but he also acknowledges that it was because of him that both he and Risur-san were saved. Fueled by a sudden surge of adrenaline, he attacks his chores with frantic intensity. He shouts to himself that these tasks are the absolute minimum he can do to repay his debt. He pushes through the labor, insisting that the work is no big deal for him as he vigorously cleans the floor. His adrenaline remains high as he declares that he is not finished with his work. His vocal intensity quickly draws the attention to Adam, who appears in the doorway with Ghosh to tell him to keep his noise level down. Rebuked, the apothecary immediately falls into a silent, dejected state, continuing to mop the floor in the quiet, snowy warehouse. Life for the group settles into a domestic routine, with several scenes showing them sharing meals, cleaning, and assisting the elf woman with her leg exercises. While massaging her hand, Risur apologizes for making the man perform these tasks every day. He reassures her that it is no trouble at all, explaining that her blood flow is currently poor and they must stimulate her nerves to aid her recovery. During their session, the man suddenly notices a breakthrough and excitedly points out that one of the fingers on her hand moved. He tells Risur-san that the nerves in her fingers must be coming back. Risur looks down at her hand in surprise, softly questioning if that is the case, but then apologizes, admitting she still cannot feel anything yet. The apothecary gently reassures Risur-san that there is no need to hurry. He expresses his confidence that by continuing with her rehabilitation, her full recovery will happen in the near future. As he speaks, Risur-san is shown with a tear in her eye, moved by his encouragement. He looks on with an expression of deep, visible emotion as she makes her promise. Risur-san smiles through her tears and vows that she will definitely make sure to squeeze the man's hand when the time finally comes. He looks down at their joined hands with a gentle smile, stating that he is looking forward to this day. The scene concludes on the warmth and shared emotion conveyed through the touch of their palms. The next day, the apothecary prepares to depart with Risur. He offers a polite apology for any trouble they caused and bids his farewells. As they walk away, Adam notes that Risur's recovery is progressing perfectly, mentioning that her limbs have mended and the decay has vanished. She adds that her continued progress now rests in the hands of the rehab nurse. Overhearing this, the apothecary and Risur both resolve to give their absolute best effort, with Adam's quiet determination reflected in a soft, final smile. Adam thought of something before they left and suggests to Risur that they step outside for a moment, to which she tentatively agrees. The apothecary asks what they need to talk about. As she prepares to leave, she reprimands him, stating that it is unrefined to butt into women's conversations. She instructs him to go pack his bags while Ghosh carries Risur. Taken aback, the apothecary questions that didn't she used to be a man. Adam continues to challenge him, asserting that having an issue with their girl talk is even more unrefined given her perfect female form. She then decides to reclassify their private conversation as doctor-patient confidentiality to end the debate. Stunned into silence by her intensity, he can only offer his quiet understanding as the two women move to the terrace alone. On the terrace, Adam begins the conversation with an apology for bringing her outside the cold. With a more somber and professional air, she acknowledges the necessity of their private meeting to discuss sensitive matters, that it was better with just the two of them. Looking closely at her, she delivers a grave medical observation regarding the abuse her body suffered in the past, that it has significantly damaged her female bodily functions. Risur gasped in confusion and distress. She confessed that her memories would not materialize and that she could not remember anything. She admitted that while she lacked memories, there was one thing she knew for certain. She trailed off while thinking about the current condition of her body. Adam apologized for making things complicated. She stated that, in her capacity as a doctor, she needed to talk the matter over with her. Adam asserted that a cure was not impossible, but she warned that the treatment involved a major risk and she will need to make a choice. Observing from the inside, the apothecary wondered to himself what they were talking about as Adam continues to tell Risur some important information about her condition. Descending to a stone staircase, he follows Adam and Ghosh into a hidden chamber. He questions her about the item she intends to give him. Ghosh dramatically unveils a large, mechanical object concealed beneath a cloth, which he immediately recognizes with a look of pure shock. He stares at the sleek, futuristic vehicle, unable to believe he is looking at an air gal. The apothecary was so surprised. Adam confirmed that it was the same vehicle he had used. The apothecary asked if the item hadn't gone missing. Adam clarified that she had purchased it after it was pawned off by someone. It's custom made by dwarves, and it's also very hard to maintain, so she didn't have much use for it. He asked if she was absolutely sure about her decision giving this to him. He thanked her profusely and noted that the gift would save them from having to walk all the way back. Adam agreed and remarked that having the vehicle would be better for the girl as well. The apothecary realized to himself that she hadn't just done it for him, but had been thinking of Risur-san as well. He announced their departure and expressed his sincere thanks for everything. Risur thanked them and offered to come back to help next time as well. Adam dismissed their thanks, claiming she had already received valuable research data. She told them they did not really need to come back. He then protested, urging her not to say it like that. In the final moments of their departure, he accelerates the air gal, sending up a massive cloud of dust as he and Risur fly away. They both looked at them from below before they speeds away. Adam watches them go with a stoic, cross-armed expression while Ghosh continues to wave a tearful farewell. High above the landscape, the vehicle becomes a distant speck against the mountains. He asked Risur-san if she was all right. Risur-san replied that she was fine and added that she was not cold at all. He observed to himself that she seemed noticeably sadder after her talk with Adam. He noted that Adam had decided to keep that conversation a secret from him. He concluded that he could not simply ask her to disclose what was said. He called out to Risur-san to get her attention. Risur-san asked what it was he wanted. He then proclaimed that it was his job to be there whenever she needed him. He wears a wide, tearful smile while addressing Risur-san. He tells her that if she needs to, she can always rely on him anytime she wants. The elf girl remains silent, her own eyes brimming with tears as she listens to his emotional pledge. A gentle smile appearing through her tears as she closed her eyes. She answered thanking him for everything. The scene concludes with a quiet expression of gratitude as they fly over the vast mountain range. The next scene reflects on a battlefield of the past, of the apothecary's regret and loss. He notes that his goals and ideals have fallen apart alongside the comrades who once pursued them. He admits that he was defeated and lost everything, ultimately failing to reach any of his ambitions. Looking down at his empty hands, Soemini calls out his name Kurosok and asks if he's listening. Kurosok stares down at his hands in a somber room, lost in the memory of a battlefield where his goals and comrades were lost. He apologizes for not listening, and Adam remarks on his gloomy expression. He then flatly reminds Kurosok that everything is over and that none of those who were lost will be coming back. As Kurosok hangs his head in silence, Adam asks what he plans to do next. His mind flashes back to the dying words of a comrade, who apologized for involving him in a selfish pursuit and lamented their failed revolution. With his final breaths, the comrade urged him to live however he wanted from then on. Kurosok gazes at his own reflection in the window, observing his dull and lightless eyes. This sight triggers a haunting memory of the same vacant expressions he saw in the eyes of the people whose lives he had taken during their final moments. Surrounded by the ghosts of his victims, he realizes that he is effectively dead himself. He looks down at his dirty, empty hands, noting that they are all he has left. Turning back to the room, he tentatively asks Adam if he can ask him something, to which Adam dryly inquires what it is. Kurosok asks what it truly means when someone tells another to live however they want. The scene shifts into a snow-covered landscape that mirrors his empty self. Inside the hot bath, An asks Risur if she is alright and instructs her to speak up if the water is too hot, noting that it would be unfortunate if she became lightheaded. Risur quietly assures her that she is fine and mentions how nice the bath feels. Mona agrees, adding that the experience truly is pleasant. An announces that it is now Mona's turn and encourages her to go ahead and get washed up, to which Mona cheerfully agrees. As they settle into the water, An checks on Risur's well-being and asks if she has enough room. Risur assures her that she is fine and expresses how much she enjoys being in the bath together with them. They started laughing as they suggest they should bathe together more often and noting how much fun it is to share the experience with Risur. An's expression suddenly changed into a more serious one. An then tells Risur that she finds her quite impressive. Taken aback by the praise, Risur repeats the sentiment as a question, wondering if she is truly impressive. An confirms this, explaining that Risur carries many burdens in such a slender body yet maintains an honest heart. She continues to praise her for being such a strong and commendable girl. An points out that he truly believes in Risur and expresses confidence that he will help her acclimate to her new limbs. And he's sure that the apothecary will be able to help her overcome that because he really believes in her. Risur reflects on the idea of him believing in her, questioning the thought with a look of quiet wonder. An agrees, noting that it has been several years since he first arrived at the village, which allows her to sense what he is thinking. She adds that he is an impressive person that he keeps coming back here, which really helps them. Having to go all the way into town just to get medicine is such a huge pain for them. An observes that he has been smiling a lot more lately compared to when he first arrived at the village. Risur listens quietly, processing the observation about his changing demeanor. An reassure Risur that they will make sure to help both her and the apothecary out in the future. They emphasize that if she ever needs anything, she can rely on them as well, rather than just depending on him. Risur softly thanks them while admitting that she cannot quite remember having a similar experience in the past. The peaceful atmosphere is briefly interrupted when Mona announces she is joining them, causing the others to cry out that she is splashing water everywhere. Watching the playful chaos, Risur quietly concludes to herself that this warm, shared experience must be what it feels like to have a family. Back to the apothecary's house, he observes that her wounds appear mostly recovered and informs her that they will transition to using only ointment for her treatment. He mentions the necessity of trimming her bangs, a suggestion Risur quietly accepts. After completing the task, he remarks that she should no longer stand out, even if they were to go into town. Risur looks up with a soft expression and thanks him very much. He observes to himself that her scars have started to become less noticeable and how she is becoming more expressive as she continues to heal. Having spent less time on her basic care, the apothecary notes that he can finally dedicate more hours to his shop. He explains that while he works during the day, Risur rests to refill her magic from the surrounding air. At night, he instructs Risur to try raising her arm slightly as he tells her to utilize light vibrations to stimulate the recovery of the nerves in her limbs. He asked if she can focus her power into her fingertips. Risur lets out a small sound of effort as she attempts to follow his directions. He notes with satisfaction that her limbs are moving, even if only slightly. He explains that they will need to keep practicing her magic together. Privately, the man observes that she is performing better than he had expected despite her post-surgery pain. After she performs well, he tells her that she has done enough for the day and praises her efforts. He tells her that they'll keep it slow and steady for now. To reward her for trying her best, he offers her some cookies that were brought over by An. Risur responds with joyful enthusiasm at the mention of the cookies. The apothecary hands a cookie to Risur, commending her for her hard work that day. As he feeds her, Risur, visibly moved by the gesture, tearfully remarks on how delicious the cookies are. He promises that once she regains the use of her arm, she will be able to eat them as quickly as she likes. Encouraged by his kindness, she determinedly declares that she will do her absolute best. 1 month later, he sits with Risur to begin her routine wrist and elbow exercises. She agrees softly, reaffirming her commitment to doing her best. As they work together, a sudden, brilliant light emanates from her hand, catching him completely off guard. Wide-eyed and startled, he observes that her magic is reacting. As the light fades, Risur gently grabs his hand. He's still visibly stunned by the sudden display of power, can only call out her name in disbelief. Risur explains that she had wanted to surprise him. She reveals that she has spent a significant amount of time practicing her magic and notes that feeling has finally returned to her hand that morning. Tearfully, Risur admits that she was also quite surprised by the development, but expresses joy that she can finally squeeze his hand back. He remembers her vow that she will definitely make sure to squeeze his hand when the time comes. He was deeply moved as she grips his fingers, can only speak her name in return. The apothecary leans forward and tells Risur how amazing she is, admitting that her recovery truly surprised him. He notes that such a feat is incredible considering it has only been a month since her surgery. Risur modestly disagrees, insisting that her success is only because he has been helping her every single night. The apothecary counters this, telling her that it is actually the result of her own dedicated efforts. The apothecary stares at her with a teary eye, as she details how move her fingers first thing every morning. And even while resting during the day, when she's alone, she'd secretly practice. Even while in bed, she was consciously bearing with the pain. Deeply touched, the apothecary observes that she truly kept her promise and offers her his sincere thanks. With tears in her eyes, Risur calls out to the apothecary and asks if she can continue holding his hand for a little while longer. He gently agrees, telling her that she can hold it whenever she wants. Outside, the night remains still under the glow of a full moon. In a dark, moonlit forest, a mysterious elf woman stands alone, calling out for her older sister and wondering where she is gone. Her appearance raises questions about whether she is an elf just like Risur. The next day, the apothecary observes that Risur has regained a significant amount of control in her hands. He suggests that she begin practicing eating on her own, reassuring her that she can go at her own pace. Risur nervously agrees, expressing a sincere desire to be able to feed herself. The apothecary then presents her with a warm bowl of food to begin her practice. The apothecary secures a spoon to Risur's hand with bandages and asks for her thoughts on the setup, to which she happily replies that it seems good. He positions the bowl in front of her and offers to guide her at the start, earning a soft thanks from her. As she begins to eat, her hand trembles with the effort, but she successfully scoops a portion of the food. Watching her closely, the apothecary exclaims in delight that she managed to get some. Determined to succeed, Risur announces her intent to start and brings the spoon to her mouth with trembling hands. She successfully takes a bite, her face lighting up with a sense of accomplishment as she finally tastes the food she managed to lift on her own. Flushed with success, Risur looks toward the apothecary and exclaims that she managed to do it. He beams with pride, confirming her achievement and telling her what a great job she did. As she continues to eat with a joyful expression, the two share a warm, quiet moment together in the kitchen. After finishing her meal, Risur exclaimed that the dumplings were really tasty. The apothecary told her that those were made from fish paste. When he asks if she had any trouble getting the food into her mouth, she brightly tells him that she didn't. However, after a brief, hesitant pause, she begins to say something else. Sensing her unspoken wish, the apothecary excitedly asks if she would like to have seconds. Blushing deeply, Risur shyly confirms that she would indeed like more food. He whispers to himself that he will protect that embarrassed face no matter what happens. The apothecary happily tells her that there is plenty left, expressing his genuine gladness that she enjoyed the meal. He realized that she have already regained her independence and has likely restored her appetite. As the pair travels through the forest, the apothecary asks Risur for her opinion on the wheelchair crafted by the village carpenter, specifically inquiring if it feels too shaky for her. She answers that she doesn't really mind it at all. She sniffs the air contentedly, remarking that the location has a pleasant feel to it. He observes that the magic in the area seems particularly strong and suggests that it is nearly time for lunch, to which she enthusiastically agrees. Finding a scenic spot to rest, the apothecary serves a cup of soup to her, who notes how wonderful it smells and offers her thanks. As she takes the mug, he observes to himself that her finger strength appears to be returning. While she enjoys her soup, she suddenly notices something and exclaims in surprise. He also looks on in confusion as she points out that they have a visitor. On her lap sits a small, long-eared creature that has approached them. The small creature makes itself comfortable on the elf's lap and shoulder, prompting her to giggle and greet it warmly. As the furry visitor settles in, she playfully observes that it is making itself quite at home. Under a clear, sun-drenched sky, the apothecary and Risur share a quiet and happy moment of rest. As they sit together in the grass, she softly calls out to him, prompting him to ask her what is on her mind. She sat peacefully in the grass with a small animal resting in her lap. Looking out over the landscape, she softly remarked that she loved the area and the people there, emphasizing how much she truly loved it all. The elf looked at him with a gentle smile and confessed that she wanted to live here forever. He gazed back at her. He then began to utter Risur's name, when all of a sudden, a pair of dark hands emerged from his back. As a massive skeletal hand suddenly grasped at his shoulders, he sat in silence while a nearby rabbit-like creature reacted with a start. Risur turned to him with a look of concern, but the apothecary asked her if she still had not regained her memories back yet. Risur admitted that she still had not regained her memories and offered an apology. He quickly pleaded with her not to be sorry. The apothecary remained silent, remembering his grim past. With how things have been going lately, he figured that if she regains her memories back, he could bring her back to her hometown. He observed that she seemed to have been recovering steadily. This idea left her appearing thoughtful as she repeated the word hometown to herself. He reflects on their first meeting, noting that while she might not remember it, she had repeatedly expressed how much she wanted to go home. He observes that her longing highlights just how much her hometown and family must have meant to her. Risur understands his sentiments. He looks down somberly, explains that he has always wished to return those things to her. He had wished for that all this time. Moved by his words, she admits she is truly thankful for his support, adding that he has made her very happy throughout their time together. However, he firmly tells her that she doesn't need to thank him, leaving her momentarily stunned. The apothecary states she doesn't have to thank her. He avoids eye contact and bluntly states that he only helped her recover for his own selfish purposes. As she listens in confused silence, he then asks if she will hear him out for a moment longer. He begins to share his past, revealing that he had lost his parents when he was very young and was subsequently taken in by a demon. He describes the demon as having been very kind and having given him a great deal during their time together. Furthermore, he explains that it was this same individual who had eventually brought him to meet Adam. Risur listens quietly, softly acknowledging his story. The confession takes a dark turn as he reveals that after growing up alongside the demon, he eventually became a killer. This revelation leaves Risur visibly shaken, as she struggles to process the shocking truth he has just shared. He explains that, during that time, the demons were plotting a coup against the ruling Eruta who were persecuting other races. His savior became the head of the revolutionary army. Despite being an Aruta himself, he was drawn to the demon's chivalrous spirit and his habit of treating all races equally, which led him to volunteer for their ranks. He observes that compared to demons, Arutas are weak and unreliable. Rather than becoming a warrior, he chose to act as a support for them. He further clarifies his past by revealing that he was an assassin. He explains that he initially sought out obsidian spiders to create poisons for his killings, which became the foundation of his apothecary knowledge. He adds that his vibration magic, known as Aruma, was simply another tool he used in his deadly trade. His confession reaches a grim peak as he describes his body as being stitched together from a pitch-black past. He further explains that the Aruta, the elves, the dwarves and the beastfolk, under the pretext that it was just a cause. But as he fight for the sake of his comrades, all those people died by his hand.